Hello everybody, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis. End Times has finished for Warhammer Fantasy. If you want to know the ending, go and click the link in the description and check out my video where I basically talk about the ending of the End Times. If you don't want spoilers, ignore that video completely, although there will be a few hinted or possibly blatantly obvious spoilers in this video. You have been warned. So what I want to talk about today is not the Warhammer End Times, not fantasy. I want to talk about 40k. So obviously with fantasy, the whole concept with fantasy and 40k is completely different. But there is a way in my head, and I've seen this on forums as well, where a 40k end times might be a thing, where you take the concept of all these big apocalyptic events that have been building up in 40k, we can't deny that, and then bringing it all to a head. I think it could work. And I'll give a few reasons why in this video, maybe a few reasons why GW won't do it, at least not for a while, and then I'll also give a breakdown of how I would go about doing it, because there's all well and good talking about it, but sometimes you've got to have a plan, and this would be my plan. Anyway, so look, why would GW want to do a 40k end times? So we've had these big events building up. The Great War being built by Ghazghkull, the 13th Black Crusade, the Return of the Silent King, the Tyranid advances, I guess you could call the Tau Empire's growth as well, and the insurgency of chaos across the galaxy. So all these events are building up and coming up and creating a head of steam. All of them building up what I like to call a head of steam. And eventually, they're going to explode. There's going to be something big at the end of it. Because there's no way Ghazghkull's going to build this gigantic war and then just sit there twiddling his thumbs. He did that on Armageddon 3. He got bored and went to do this. So all these events will have to come to a head eventually, and GW will have to write that lore. And what better way to do it than doing it all at once in an End Times-esque series? Second of all, when was the last time something absolutely massive happened that changed the background of the 40k universe? Probably the coming of the Tyranids in the 90s. The plot, the lore has, yes, been expanded, and yes, things have moved forward a tiny bit, but in terms of the Imperium teetering on the brink of destruction, chaos knocking at the doors, Xenos threats popping up all over the place, the Eldar dying off, the Tyranids encroaching everywhere, orcs everywhere, the plot hasn't really gone anywhere in the past 20 years. Or the past 15, definitely. At least in my lifetime, I don't think the plot's gone very far at all. So this is a great excuse, again, to shove the plot forward and change the look of 40k. Thirdly, models. Some of the most awesome models and characters could be created out of this series. A model for the Silent King, the greatest Necron of all. A model for some sort of super world-eating Tyranid, because you know they'll develop one eventually. Bringing back Primarchs such as Robert Guilliman, who might heal from his stasis, Lionel Johnson, whose alarm clock might eventually go off in the Rock, all these, and Leman Russ in the Eye of Terror, coming back for the End Times, the Wolf Time. What better excuse to bring these models in than for some climatic big ending a la End Times? Plus, it allows old models to get refreshed. So models like Abaddon, it's ancient Abaddon's model. Maybe it's time to give it a refresh. Maybe Be'lakor, if we're going to be talking about the End Times, why is Be'lakor not involved? Maybe he'll get some new badass model. Maybe we'll see representation for some I don't know. But anyway, there could be some really awesome models coming out of a 40k End Times. Really, really could be amazing. And I, for one, would love to see them, and I'd love to own them. So that's on the 4 side. Now, why would GW not want to do it? Well, 40k's universe, 40k as a game. Ignore the lore. 40k as a game is solid. It's got a good player base. It's got a good tournament scene. And it's still got a very wide spread of stuff. GW does not need to be digging 40k out of a hole. Yeah, maybe it's getting a little bit smaller. But it's still a very solid game. Fantasy was dying. I think most people will probably admit fantasy was starting to die. It was having a very small player base. Tournaments were far less common, and it needed something to shake it up. I don't mean blowing things up, shaking up, but it definitely needed something doing to it, and an End Time seemed fitting. So 40k doesn't need the shake-up that Fantasy needed in order to get it out of the hole that it's in and then usher in a new game, or at least revamp the entire universe. Second, bringing about the end times for a galaxy is a lot harder than to do for a single world. So the Warhammer world is a world. It's easy enough to bring out the end of a world. This happens all the time in 40k. But the galaxy, like, yeah, okay, let the galaxy burn, but how? It's so much harder to envision how the 40k galaxy could be brought into a new age. Yes, you could have the death of the Emperor and of Terror, and the defeat of the Imperium and the rampant widespread of chaos. Okay, I'll buy that. So you take the human factions out of the equation, the good human factions out of the equation, but then you still have the Tyranid problem. Assuming the only way I can see it is the Tyranids eat everything and move on. That's the logical way to do it. Or the Necrons harvest everything and sort of assert their rule over whatever remains. Or maybe you can get biotransference back, but I'll discuss that later. So bringing about an end times for a universe or a galaxy is a lot harder to do than for a single world. So it'll be harder for the writers. Thirdly, it's a lot more established with the way things are. Like, I think one of the big draws for 40k is the way the fluff is written. It's being part of this last stand of humanity against all these encroaching threats that appeals to some people. Like, I love the Imperial Guard sometimes because they are the last resemblance of humanity fighting for humanity. I love Orcs because, well, they're the opposite. They just live for a fight, and that's really cool. Whereas I guess if you took some factions out of the equation and sort of re-established a new galactic order with humans not in the equation, you probably alienate a lot of people because they don't have a relatable human faction anymore. They just have chaos, which doesn't really work. So, I don't know. I'm not GW. I don't have some sort of wire into GW guessing what they're going to do. But I think you could do a 40k end times. And here's how you do it, in my opinion. So the first thing you do is you'd reunite the Necron tier. You would bring the Silent King back, and he, alongside the Triarch or the Triarch, would unite the Necron dynasties, one at a time, basically by using the Praetorian and re-establishing the command protocols. He severed them, he can probably put them back together again. And that's what I think he'd do. He'd re-establish control of the Necron race, if he wanted it, in order to find biotransference, or to just unleash the Catan in order to destroy everything that's not worthy of biotransference, and then transfer into whatever's left. And this allows you to build an entirely new Necron tier race. Yes, you can still have Necrons, maybe those that weren't controlled by the Silent King or broke free from the Silent King, maybe under Imhotep, a la Tyrion and Malekith, but then have the Necron tier as a whole new race. With all the advanced weaponry of Necrons, and you take away their survivability gimmick for sort of making them a bit shooty Tyranid-ish. I know it's not great, but it might work. And then this faction could then go and build alliances with the Imperium because the Silent King is blatantly aware that the Tyranids are a great threat. So it will build alliances with every race it can. Especially now it's got their souls back, maybe. They might even be able to treaty with the Eldar. The second one, I would focus on the 13th Black Crusade, the Cadian Gate. That would be my second book. I'm going to do it over a 5-book format. So the second book will be the Cadian Gate, the final Black Crusade, and the inevitable success of Abaddon over Creed. Through sheer weight of numbers and probably some demonic luck, Abaddon gets through. Probably, I'm guessing, the gods themselves will intervene to break the Cadian Gate asunder, if they have to. So that would be my book 2. You might introduce new demon princes of Chaos Champions who are elevated to demonhood. Maybe Abaddon finally gets it as his reward, or you could elevate Khan, Typhus, Ahriman, and Lucius to demonhood, if you so wanted to. Book 3, I would focus on the Eldar, the Rana Dandra, the returning together of the Eldar kin, mediated, of course, by the Harlequins, who are, as far as I remember, the faction that brings the Eldar together when kin strife isn't going on, to unite these factions under one banner. Who leads it? I don't know. Will it be the Eldar craft worlds, i.e. the Farseers, or will it be Vect? Will it be a combination of all three? Will it be Vect and a Council of Farseers? Don't know. But uniting them all together for the Rana Dandra, the end time for the Eldar, fighting off the legions of chaos that have just broken through the Cadian Gate. See where I'm going here. And then at the last minute, the Farseers maybe teleport away what they can of the Eldar race, a la Lizardmen, to rendezvous with the new alliance with the Necron tier. And then book 4, that was in Fantasy the Skaven, you could focus on Ghazghkull. Easy peasy. Ghazghkull's Great War, smashing into the Tyranids. The infinite orcs against the infinite Tyranids could create one almighty scrap. Ghazghkull versus the Swarm Lord has to happen. And the winner of that becomes Chaos's, assuming the orcs win, they become Chaos's new ally to rip the Imperium asunder. Alternatively, you could have it that you have a 6th book which focuses on the Tyranids, assuming they're not broken and actually conquer the orcs, then focusing on the Tyranids, going after whatever remains of humanity on the Eastern Fringe, dealing with the Tau, and then having a 6th book bringing Chaos / the Grand Alliance against the bugs in the last fight. Book 5 has to be at End Times Abaddon, or bringing back the Primarchs to fight off Ezekiel Abaddon and maybe Ghazghkull in the second Siege of Terror. It just has to be done, because there's no better way to end. And depending on how you want it to go, maybe the Emperor with his last blast of psychic energy shatters the Chaos forces before dying, meaning that Terror itself destabilizes or even is destroyed, and the Eldar have to teleport off what they can before the world implodes and the Imperium loses its lodestone. Or you have Abaddon win, go into the throne room, laugh in the Emperor's face, basically say something along the lines of, "This one was for my father," or whatever it is, and rip the Emperor and the Golden Throne apart, even at the cost of his life. Then blasting Terror apart again, the Chaos Sorcerers, who now realise the Imperium have been defeated, have all whisked themselves off again to make sure that only Abaddon dies, and then that becomes a power vacuum in which the 4 demon princes of the Chaos Champions and maybe even the demon Primarchs come together to form another Grand Alliance to deal with the bugs, or just to have some infighting, or just keep the orcs as a pet, or whatever. And then if you need book 6 with the bugs versus the chaos to determine it all, probably ending in some psychic war between the High Fleets and the Chaos forces, probably going unbelievably huge, creating a second Warp Rift, or even a Webway Rift, a second Eye of Terror through which unlimited resources of demons pour through, the bugs eventually die, Chaos rules supreme over the galaxy, the Chaos Gods move on, a la End Times Fantasy. I came up with most of that on the spot, and it sounds really cool, and I really think that could work as a blob of lore for Warhammer 40k End Times. Yes, then you have to sort of rebuild the game. You could do it in a very skirmishy style, with the last pockets of human resistance who refuse to give up on the Emperor. Maybe his body is gone and Terror is gone, but they still believe he lives on in them in some way, and they fight on. You could have last pockets of orcs under Chaos boot, with Ghazghkull trying to get back in. You could have what remains of the Tau sects, or the Eldar if they survive the Rana Dandra in some way. And you could rebuild the game from there. I don't think it'll happen, at least not for another few years, because GW doesn't think 40k is in that bad of a spot. I don't either. But it's an option. And if End Times 40k is announced in 2 years, I will just basically smile and grin and look back at this video and laugh. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what you think. Would a 40k End Times be an interesting thing to you? Would it work? Is it too early? Would it save? Would it be needed? How would you go about doing it? Or is it just best to leave it alone? So let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and I will see you again.